I built this Naya Cascade deck featuring Cleansing Wildfire, a card I hate in Pauper but not for the reasons you might think. While this glorified rampant growth is the single thing that keeps bridges from not getting banged, that's not its actual thing, but rather it caused a Tog, a staple in Pauper, to get banned instead. So despite Affinity still being a top threat in the format, a Tog was sacrificed so Wildfire could continuously play. However, since everyone thinks it's the best thing it happened to Pauper, I decided to build a deck around it, using cheap removal spells to stay alive, efficient creatures that ramp us ahead in the game, utility ones that provide extra value, and big creatures that can cast other spells for free. In a nutshell, this is Naya Cascade. So let's see how broken Cleansing Wildfire really is, and if the Tog sacrifice was worth it. In my first match I was paired against Boros Synthesizer. It seemed like a first match, since both of us need some time to set up. I should note that my next two matches are against the most popular Wildfire decks in the format, so if you want to know the strengths and weaknesses of this strategy, don't miss those out. I immediately removed the flyer and later cast a Capture Sunlight to reveal a Lanora Visionary. They decided to kill it, but I still resolved the Avenging Hunter as planned. They also play a couple of creatures as response, and since one of them flies, I decided to get rid of it rather than the Goblin, as the latter can be blocked. The bad news was that they managed to find removal spell for the Avenging Hunter, and now they had the initiative. My plan was to cast the boarding party and retake the initiative from them, but unfortunately they had a removal spell ready to prevent that from happening. Now I was in a knocker spot, as I couldn't get through easily. To make matters worse, they found a way to return the creatures thanks to Dawnbringer Cleric. I tried to stay in the game by returning a boarding party from the graveyard to my hand, but they had an answer ready for it, plus a considerable amount of cards in their hand. In the end, I didn't draw anything relevant, so I decided to concede and move to the game number 2. I decided to bring in a couple of Declaimers to deal with the removal and any pesky artifacts they may play after Cyborg. I didn't see any breach in the first game, so I didn't bring Dust to Dust, but I would have if I had seen at least one. My starting hand was strong with a turn 2 Cleansing Wildfire and a turn 3 Jagged Thief, which meant that by turn 4 I couldn't play a boarding party if I drew an untapped land. Since that wasn't the case, I cast a Capture Sunlight, which revealed a removal spell for the Glinthawk. Meanwhile, my opponent was stuck on lands since they kept bouncing their artifact land due to their Glinthawks. I took advantage of this by getting ahead of mana, and in my next turn I could cast either a boarding party to apply more pressure or an Annoyed Altisor that could stop their attacks while being hardened to get rid of. I went for the latter, which revealed a Declaimer to put them further behind by putting their land on the bottom. Then I attacked, and despite losing my Annoyed Altisor on their turn, I was still in a great shape, as a boarding party would take its place, followed by a Lanora Visionary. This was a tough position for my opponent, as I had triple the amount of lands they had, plus 2 solid creatures already putting tons of pressure on them. They were forced to trade in a negative way for them, and with the board clear, it seemed like a perfect time to play an Avenging Hunter. The other option was to play an Ardent Elementalist to bring back the Declaimer and either deal with their land or release my dinosaur, but this line seemed better for me. After they played a couple of creatures, I returned a boarding party to my hand, which revealed a second Avenging Hunter. Before I could attack, my opponent gave up the game. This hand seems skippable if I can find a red source, since I have a Cleansing Wildfire and a removal spell in hand. Even if I don't draw one early, I can still have some plays by resolving a Lanora Visionary into an Avenging Hunter. Unfortunately, I don't get a red source, but I play a turn 3 Visionary to try to catch up. Even though they remove my Visionary, I'm slowly out-resourcing them and have more mana than they do. They remove a second Visionary, so my plan now is to catch up by playing a Wildfire, a Jagged Thief, and remover then Flyer. However, I drew the Declaimer from Wildfire, which changes things since they only have 3 lands, and getting rid of one seems critical. I use the Declaimer on the breach, even though we take more damage the next turn. We quickly catch up by removing their Flyer and adding 2 bullets to the board, thanks to Boarding Party and its Cascade ability, despite the opponent dealing with our bigger creature. We keep up the momentum by removing their blocking and casting a second Jagged Thief, setting up our next turn for 2 Avenging Hunters and initiative triggers. They play 2 blockers and pass, and we made our already thought play. With their current board, they are unlikely to remove 2 blockers and steal initiative. They realize this and drop the game. I'm playing against Mardu Synthesizer in our second match. They rely heavily on Cleansing Wildfire to gain more card advantage and use their cards like Navigator Compass to battle red decks. We both use our initial tours to set up, but I believe our late game is better than theirs in the long run. By turn 5, I can cast a boarding party ahead of a scale and another spell for free. They deal with it as expected while adding more creatures to the board. I didn't want to play my second boarding party right away, as I didn't want to rely on a single creature and a random spell. Now, the most threatening creature on the board is Seeker of the Way, but I have an easier time blocking it than dealing with a bird, so I decided to get rid of one with Journey to Nowhere. They proceeded to chain multiple spells to make a Seeker bigger, so I decided not to block this turn. Instead, I cast a boarding party and follow up with a Capture Sunlight that revealed another Jewel Thief. After dealing 9 damage, they continue chaining multiple spells, but if they attack with Seeker of the Way, the trade was just a 1-for-1 rather than a 2-for-1 in their favor, so I decided to double block. In my turn, I found another Capture Sunlight, which revealed a 3rd Jewel Thief. A second January Visionary also joined the board, and now we have the creature advantage. With just a handful of options at their disposal, they decided to attack and to try and raise me, but when I attempted to remove one of their creatures, they conceded. I decided to bring in 4 Dust to Dust and a couple of the Glamours for my post-Cyber match, as my opponent relies heavily on artifact lands. I had to keep a 6-card hand after mulliganing, which is a bit risky, but I have some creature removal and a bridge will enable my Cleansing Wildfire. Unfortunately, I missed a land drop on turn 2, but I found a bridge the following one. My opponent gained some value with their Glink Hack or Wellspring combo, but I'm not feeling the pressure since I have to remove spells in hand and I'm searching for a forest. They play a Jeskai Fissure and they play an Ichor Wellspring to gain more advantage, but our deck is designed to be a 2-for-1 without needing complementary pieces. I cast a Cleansing Wildfire and a Land Visionary to try and ramp up, but my opponent removed my creatures and attack. I use a Capture Sunlight to gain more life, add a body to the field, and remove their biggest flyer to reduce damage. Removing my graveyard was annoying since I planned on using it later, so casting an Altisor seems fitting. Big Dino added another body to the field and stopped my opponent's attacks, eventually conceding the game as they didn't find an answer for it. Jeskai Ephemerate is our last match. This is another deck that uses Cleansing Wildfire as part of their game plan. It makes sense to me to prove that my deck is superior to others that use it as a part of their game plan, and I will also showcase its weaknesses in my second game, so stay tuned for that one. In the meantime, we both are struggling to find our fourth land, but I was able to catch up on things by playing a Jewel Thief. They resolve a Boomul Drifter, so my plans to cast an Avenging Hunter will have to wait, as they can easily steal the initiative from me. I cast a boarding party that reveal a Land Visionary, and even if they find a way to deal with the party, this now means that I can play an Annoyed Altisor on my next turn. I did that, and there's no worse feeling than playing your Cave spell and hitting a Rampant Growth. Still, at least this gave me a card, despite them countering the dinosaur. Luckily, I now can attempt to cast 2 Avenging Hunters next turn or play an Ardent Elementalist to bring back the Pulse of Murasa to play my Annulled Altisor. However, they deny my plans, so I am back to playing 2 Avenger Hunters next turn. The Archmancer Late to Dinner combo is annoying, but it's not as bad. I will play an Avenging Hunter while keeping 2 as a backup. As expected, they stole the initiative, but to my surprise, they just passed the turn. I cast a Capture Sunlight in hopes of revealing another removal spell, but instead, I found another body to add to the board, which is also good. I attack and they made a curious play to get rid of my board, but they might have forgotten about the trample of Jewel Thief. This allowed me to steal the initiative from them and advance 2 more rooms, thanks to my other Avenger Hunters in hand. Despite the setback, my opponent is still in a very good position as they have 6 cards in hand and managed to add more bodies to the field. Thanks to the initiative trigger, I found a boarding party and attacked with the team. Post-combat, I found 2 more creatures and a Captured Sunlight, so my chances of winning increased. However, if there's one card combination that can get them the answer they need, it has to be Mulldrifter Ephemerate. They somehow managed to have a second Ephemerate which allowed them to find a second Fiery Cannonade, and with an additional removal spell in hand, they survived another turn. They hard cast a Mirror Shell Crab in hopes of stopping my attacks and also got rid of my Jewel Thief. Now, here's an interesting play. I can attack and force a chump block, but if they have an Ephemerate, they can block and steal the initiative. The other option is to not to attack and pass the turn, but if they find removal for the boarding party, I lose the creature and initiative. Let me know in the comments what you would have done. In my case, I took the first choice, and the worst case scenario happened. Still, despite taking over the initiative, they failed to find an answer or a blocker to not die and scoop. Post Cyborg, we followed the same recipe we used against Mardu Synthesizer, and despite not having wide sources on our initial hand, a well-timed Dust to Dust can be lights out for them, so I decided to keep it. A Declaimer on the land should be devastating in this early portion of the game, but I decided to be greedy and wait and see if they have a Cleansing Wildfire to to 4-1 them on their next turn. This didn't happen, but I could still get rid of their land and resolve a Jewel Thief on my turn. This is big, as if they tap out, I can resolve an Avenging Hunter to fetch my second white source, to cast Dust to Dust on my next turn. They rammed themselves further thanks to Cleansing Wildfire, but on my turn, I left them with no red mana by removing both of their artifact lands, and now they are facing 2/5 power creatures, enough for them to scoop.
Now, if you're new to Pauper and want to test other cool decks, click into that playlist. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.